The Tabby Diaries, Mildred and the Firestorm's Shadow, narrated by Precious McFluffy Butt, fluffiest observer of a world too often in flames. There are times when even the most stubborn flicker of hope feels like a flame trembling against the weight of the wind. This tale begins in the heart of a season filled with smoke and ash, a time when the land cried out and the sky wept embers instead of rain. Mildred, my decidedly mediocre witch and devoted, if occasionally exasperating, human companion, had been unusually quiet for days. The cauldron, so often filled with bubbling nonsense and misfired potions, sat empty in the corner of our crooked little cottage. Outside, the once vibrant forests whispered only the echoes of a disaster unfolding far away. It began with a strange letter delivered not by the usual bumbling messenger crow, but by a phoenix, a bird of fire whose arrival was too on the nose for comfort. Mildred read the note aloud, her voice trembling as she reached the final line. The fires rage in the west. Magic cannot stop them, nor can mortals alone. But help is needed, any help at all. For once, she did not bumble into action. She simply sat there, staring at the curling edges of the parchment, as though the words themselves had burned her. I, being the practical feline that I am, flicked my tail and jumped onto the table to investigate. "Mildred," I said. Telepathically, of course, I'm not one to waste words aloud. "Do you really think you can help with this? Fire is not exactly your forte." She sighed, her gray, wavy hair falling into her face as she slumped forward. "Precious, I don't know if I can help, but how can I sit here when so many are losing everything?" I tilted my head, watching her closely. This was not the usual Mildred, the one who fretted over burnt porridge and misplaced broomsticks. This was someone weighed down by the enormity of a world she couldn't mend, and yet she stood, determination settling into her gentle wrinkles. The journey west was unlike any we'd taken before. The closer we got, the darker the sky became, and not with the comforting shadows of twilight. Smoke clung to the air like an unwelcome guest, and even I, regal and unflappable, found myself coughing now and then. When we arrived, the devastation was worse than either of us could have imagined. Entire villages reduced to ash. People huddled together in makeshift camps, their faces etched with grief and exhaustion. The land itself seemed to ache, its once vibrant greens and golds replaced by scorched black and gray. Mildred set to work immediately, using what little magic she could muster. She conjured water from the earth to soothe dry throats and washed away the soot from tear-streaked faces. She brewed simple potions to ease burns and lull the weary into a dreamless sleep. And though her efforts were small in the face of such a vast tragedy, they were received with gratitude. Meanwhile, I prowled the camp, my presence bringing a rare smile to those who noticed me. Children reached out with hesitant hands to stroke my fur, and I allowed it, for once. After all, even a cat as dignified as I can recognize the need for comfort. One evening, as we rested under a sky too choked with smoke to reveal the stars, a young boy approached us. He held a bundle of charred wood in his hands, pieces of what had once been a toy horse, now barely recognizable. "My papa made this for me," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's all I have left." Mildred knelt before him, her kind eyes meeting his. "It's a brave little horse," she said softly. "And you're a brave boy for holding on to it." She reached out, her fingers brushing the broken wood. With a whispered incantation, a faint glow surrounded the pieces. When the light faded, the horse was whole again, its carved features glimmering faintly in the firelight. The boy's eyes filled with tears, and he hugged the toy to his chest. "Thank you," he whispered before running off to show his mother. I looked at Mildred, surprised by the strength of her magic in that moment. She caught my gaze and shrugged, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Sometimes, Precious," she said. "It's the small things that matter most." Days turned into weeks, and slowly, hope began to take root amidst the ashes. Aid arrived from distant lands, bringing food, supplies, and helping hands. The fires, though still burning in some places, began to lose their ferocity. And through it all, Mildred continued her quiet work, weaving tiny threads of magic into a tapestry of resilience and recovery. When it was finally time for us to leave, the people gathered to bid us farewell. They called Mildred a hero, though she waved off the title with her usual self-depreciating humor. As we made our way back to the cottage, the air grew clearer, and the sky regained its blue. But the weight of what we had seen lingered, like smoke in the corners of our minds. "Mildred," I said as we settled by the hearth that evening, "do you think they'll be okay?" She looked at me, her expression thoughtful. "I think they will," she said softly, "because even in the face of so much loss, they still found a way to hold on. To each other, to hope, to the little things that make life worth living." And as the fire crackled in the hearth, its warmth a stark contrast to the destruction we had witnessed, I found myself hoping she was right. This story is dedicated to the brave responders and the people of California. Our hearts, prayers, and thoughts are with you.